Thank you for joining us, and thank you for completing all those polls. It was really informative to see what the challenges are around load shedding and how many Airbnb hosts there are in the room, predominantly Airbnb hosts, but also welcome to those people who aren't Airbnb hosts yet. I have with me today Roz from Versify Solar, and I'm going to hand over to him, and I'm going to ask Roz to introduce the company and tell us just a 1 minute, 2 minute introduction of how you guys started and why did you go, why did you start this company?
Cool. Thanks for having me. Apologies for the technical errors and being late. Yeah, so we started this company actually originally back in 2016. It wasn't a solar focused company at that stage. It was actually an aggregator and marketplace for professional services. So it would have worked quite nicely for your Airbnb hosts. However, we pivoted the business in COVID. It was a forced pivot, and we had found success in the solar vertical. We had over 350 categories on our platform at the time, and solar was our most popular one. And this was before the massive load shedding kind of impact that we've seen as a country since COVID. But for us, the biggest barrier to entry for solar was the financing piece, and not everyone having the 150 to 200 to 300,000 rand lying around, to install a solar solution. So we kind of set out on a task of how do we make solar more accessible for more people. Again, this was before, I mean, load shedding was a thing, but it wasn't as big a thing. It was more around what the future looks like. And we believe that the future's got panels on every roof, electric cars and in the garage, et cetera, et cetera. And we were just trying to accelerate people's transition to sustainable energy. And the easiest way to get started was to offer kind of flexible payment solutions. So that's kind of what we went to market to solve, and we've evolved our products quite nicely over the last few years. And yeah, that's where we find ourselves today.
Okay, great. And Roz, what I find very interesting about your setup is that you went to compare notes with some other industries. I think you said the fiber industry, to try and understand what their biggest pitfalls were and what they did and what they would have liked to have done differently. Just give us a brief rundown of that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of parallels to the fiber industry and the fiber rollout, particularly Vumatel and how they went to market. They went to market. I mean, they had to go and lay infrastructure down, so they did a suburb kind of rollout. That was because they had to go and lay in a certain area and then get take up in those areas. However, what we liked about that rollout, we obviously don't need to do that because we put infrastructure up only when our customers sell, as opposed to them laying down cable and hoping that customers take up their offering. But what we liked about how the fiber guys rolled it out was that sense of community and that suburb feel. So we've tried to mimic that from both a marketing and a support feel. And with our app that we're launching kind of in a couple of months, we have a very big kind of community vibe to it, in terms of benchmarking yourself against others in your area. How are you performing? How is your solar performing against others of similar nature? We kind of marking it the Strava for solar. So
Wow.
some very exciting things coming.
Okay, excellent. So I know there are lots of questions here tonight, and I just want to go through a few of them. I know that there's a lot of anger around load shedding, and solar and load shedding solutions are such a grudge purchase, but it's something that's not going to go away. And it doesn't matter how long you try to stick your head in the sand about that. And even if it does go away, Roz, I think you'll agree with me, for those of us who do go the the solar route or the battery backup route. It's just in the end going to be better for us. It gives us more control over the services that we provide and the comfort that we have. And South Africans just are so resilient. You know, if something goes wrong, we always make a plan. But with the whole load shedding dilemma and the solutions around load shedding come so many questions. I mean, there's all the technical jargon. And I saw on the poll now that I ran just before you were able to join us that a lot of people said, you know, I don't understand all of this technical jargon. And Roz is going to just give us a brief rundown of what it is that we need to know. You know, you don't need to know everything about a car in order to drive it, but it does help to just have the basics so that you know somebody else can't pull the wool over your eyes. And then there's the big question and the fear around appointing somebody who's not going to be as a reputable service provider. But not only that, how do you know that the person that's going to install your solar and going to be your service provider is going to be around in 6 months or in 2 years' time? You know, I just take a very good friend of mine had a stroke the other day, and she is semi-retired and she's got no other income and she's the sole breadwinner, and suddenly she's unable to function. And she's now relying on family and friends to keep her going. What if, and she's not in the solar industry, she's in the conveyancing industry, but what if she was my solar service provider? What am I going to do if that person is just no longer around, not because they're not reputable, but something like that happened? And then the big question that came about for everybody here was the cost around solar. I mean, how many of us have got 50, 75, 200,000, 300,000 Rand lying around that they could just take out and install solar? There's just such a large portion of the population that's just, we can't afford that. And even though there are tax incentives that have now been announced, Roz is going to give us the fine print on those tax incentives so that we better understand those. And then who is eating our cheese? You know, it's no longer a question of who moved your cheese. Somebody moved it and is now eating your cheese in terms of your Airbnb market share or your short-term rental market share. Even, you know, many of you may use other booking platforms besides Airbnb. And then we're going to look at the solutions, the options around that, because some of us might be able to install solar. Some of us might be in complexes, in sectional title complexes where you can't put a solar panel on the roof. And then Versify has got a special for attendees of this webinar that we're going to announce right at the end. And then we're also going to have a very quick Q&A, but we're going to wrap this up by 7 o'clock. And I'm sorry that we started late, but I'm sure that we can make up the time. So Roz, maybe if you can just take us through the technical jargon. I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If you can take us through some of the tech stuff, what is it that I need to know?
So yeah, it's a good place to start. We've also set out. I mean, you use the analogy of a car. You don't need to know how a car works necessarily in terms of pistons and combustion engines in order to drive it, and that's something that we are looking to achieve with our solutions. You shouldn't need to know all the ins and outs from a technicality point of view. It should just work. So that's something that we are striving to distill that into a very nice and easy, user-friendly way. However, just some of the high-level technical things to be aware of. There's two main ones or three main ones to look at. The first is the usage of or the unit of measurement of electricity. So electricity is measured in kilowatt hours, and basically what that means is how many kilowatts how many kilowatts do you consume in an hour. So if an example being your battery, so I'll just use round numbers. If we've got a 10 kilowatt hour battery, a good analogy is like a 10,000 liter water tank. And your usage or your pull on that battery is measured in kilowatt hours. So if you're pulling 1 kilowatt, So a hairdryer, as an example, would pull about 1 to 2 kilowatts. That means I'm going to use the one to make the numbers easy. But if you're pulling 1 kilowatt, that battery would last you 10 hours. If you are pulling 10 kilowatts, it would last you 1 hour. So in a similar rate of a water tank, if you're drawing 1 liter an hour, it's going to last you X amount of times versus 10 liters an hour. So the battery size is measured in kilowatt hours. Usage in the house is measured in kilowatts, and total kilowatts consumed. They also refer to it as a unit. So 1 kilowatt is 1 unit. So on your utility bill, you can quite clearly see what your kilowatt usage is, and the cost per that kilowatt is stated on your utility bill. The second thing to know is, in the theme of watts, is the panel size. So panels are basically sized in watts. So the standard kind of size panels that we install would range between 400 to 500 watt panels. That's basically what a panel can produce in a given period of time. So the high level calculation, again, I'm going to use round numbers to make it very easy. If you've got a 500 watt panel and you've got 10 of them, basically how the solar kind of production, sorry, my dogs are barking in the background. Let me just put some earphones in. Apologies.
We can't hear them, Roz.
Okay, well
But
then
it's
that's okay.
fine.
I'll carry on then.
You'll ignore them on your side. It's fine.
Okay, cool. So if you've got 10 panels of 500 watts each, that gives you 10 times 500, gives you 5,000 watt peak. So 5,000 watts is 5 kilowatts, kilo being 1,000 watts. So how the high level calculation works is, if you've got 5 kilowatt peak, we then apply a sun factor number to that, a sun hour number. So we use around 5. Again, I'm just rounding the numbers to make it easy. So a string of 10 panels of 500 watts, you can expect, you times that by 5, the sun hours, you can expect that system to produce around 25 kilowatts a day. So that's a very good back of the envelope calculation to know, and I can share the links. We've got links of this on our website that make it very easy to understand. But if you go and look at your utility bill and you're seeing that I'm kind of pulling 30 kilowatts a day, if this system can produce 25, you are 90 odd percent covered by the system, what it can produce. And then finally, the last thing to remember, so the three kind of things are your battery, your panels, and then the final thing is the inverter. What an inverter does is basically, in your home, all your appliances, generally speaking, run on what's called alternative current, AC/DC, whereas panels and batteries produce DC, direct current. So what the inverter actually does is it takes the power either from the batteries or the panels or both, and it inverts that power or converts that power from direct current into alternative current so that it can be used in your home. And the size of the inverter is measured in kVAs. So you get or kilowatts. So same thing. A watt is a volt times an amp. That's where the W comes from. So a 5 kilowatt inverter, 10 kilowatt inverter, 20 kilowatt inverter. And basically what that does is, that's what the inverter can handle at any given time. So at my home, I've got a 5 kilowatt inverter. I've only got one geyser in the house. I don't have a pool. It's a relatively small house. 5 kilowatts is more than enough for me. In order to exceed 5 kilowatts, I would need to be running, microwaves, kettles, ovens, geyser, all at the same time during load shedding for me to overload that inverter. So there's a few kind of rule of thumbs. Our 5 kilowatt kind of system fits in the 2 to 3 bedroom smaller residence. Mine's about a 400 square meter property. The traditional average size homes, in terms of family homes, we generally would put on an 8 kilowatt inverter. That seems to fit quite nicely for homes that have maybe more than one geyser, swimming pool, family of 4 type of scenario. And then if your house is three-phase, we also offer a 12 kilowatt three-phase inverter. And it goes up from there. We've also got a 16 kilowatt, but that's generally on the much bigger homes that we would use that for. So just to kind of summarize that technical jargon, the main things to understand is size of inverter and what it can handle, 5, 8, 12, etc. Size of batteries, our minimum battery is 5 kilowatts, but these are modular, so you can add 2, 3, 4, 5 batteries, and it's just basically bolting on more and more storage space. So at my home, I've got 2 5 kilowatt batteries. I've got 10 kilowatt hours worth of storage, and I've got 8 panels of 450 watts. So my system produces about 16 kilowatts a day, of which I store 10 of them in the batteries, 5 of which kind of gets used as and when needed, and that sees me through. I'd probably buy between 2 and 3 kilowatt hours from the grid on a daily basis. So I'm 80 to 90% off grid on a standard day.
Fabulous. Roz, that is the best blonde-proof description of all those technical jargon anyone has ever given me. So thank you. I've never understood kilowatt and all these things that you've mentioned until now. Thank you for a really good description as far as that goes. When it comes
electricity and water have a lot of parallels. So whenever in doubt, just kind of think about storage of water and liters being kilowatts, and kind of the storage space would be then how much can you fit in that kind of tank. That's a very good analogy.
I love these analogies because I come from a property management background, been in property management for years, and I understand everything except electricity, but you've made it super easy for me. And I hope everybody else in the room also understood it the way that I now have. Let's move on to the whole question that everybody has around reputable contractors, because what makes you guys different?
So again, when we set out on this journey, a big solution that we wanted to solve was this peace of mind kind of angle, because it's a tale as old of time. We've seen it a million times where, as per your friend, they may have got a solar system installed by an independent solar contractor, and we see it all the time. That person has either no longer in business, they don't answer their phone, they've immigrated to Australia, whatever the issue is, and the customers ended up being left high and dry. How we've aimed to kind of tackle that is twofold. One, we have a network of installers. So we have standardized our offering. We have done our installation procedures in such a way that it doesn't actually matter who installed your system. Any one of our installer network partners can help you maintain. They can walk onto site 2 days, 6 months, 5 years later and be able to tackle the problem. And the second one, and
sorry,
this one,
Roz, I forgot to mention to everybody that you are also a qualified engineer. So all of that must have come in handy when you drew up all the specs and procedures that you're talking about now.
Yeah, to a point. We got taught how to problem solve at university. So very much so. The second reason, or the second way that we have tackled the problem, and this was the one that gives more peace of mind to our customers, is that we align our interests. So 99% of our customers are on some form of a monthly payment with us. We do offer cash solutions to the people who do have the money lying around, but as I said, 90%, 99% of our customers are on a monthly payment. And it's quite simple to give them peace of mind to say, well, if we don't deliver and there's issues with your system, you're simply going to stop paying and our business model falls over. And it's very also similar we made mention of the fiber industry before. What I loved about, I'm on Vumatel and my ISP is Cool Ideas. What I love about their service is if there's an issue, there's no call out fees. I just log a ticket and someone comes and fixes it. And that's exactly what we are trying to do as well. I think, as you all know, as property owners, it's such a grudge purchase when you're having to pay a call out fee for something that should be working and isn't. So that's how we kind of tackle that problem around reputable installers. And another kind of thing about it is it's just a fact of life and a fact of the situation. Installers are paid to install solar systems. They make a margin up front, and it doesn't pay them to go back and to support their customers. So we see it quite often where people will just fall off the face of the earth, or they just stop answering your calls because it's not worth, even if they do charge you a call out fee, they're not making the margin to come and support you, which we don't feel is fair. So we offer full kind of maintenance and support throughout to give our customers peace of mind. They are paying on a monthly basis, and that's kind of how we've tried to align our interests in that regard.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. We're going to take questions at the end. So if anybody's got questions, please hold them or type them in the chat box if you think you're going to forget about it. So now let's touch on the whole cost aspect. And I know it's not possible for you to give a quote to anybody just in this webinar because everybody's situation is going to be different. But I obtained quotes from you guys, and I've got different types of properties. I've got one sectional title that is in a complex where I can't have solar panels, and then I've got a 5-bedroom freestanding house where I can do. So I've got an idea of what your costs are. But maybe before we get to the cost aspect, I know that you've read the fine print on the tax incentives that government has recently announced. Maybe just take us through that so that we can better understand it.
Yeah, sure. So the tax incentives that governments have announced recently are a step in the right direction, in terms of they finally recognizing that they need private capital to help on the generation aspect of their business. However, it's not ideal because it's limited to cash customers effectively. So in order to get the tax rebate, you would have needed to buy the system outright. And the tax rebate is actually only, you can only get a rebate on the actual panels. So it doesn't include if your invoice is 200,000 Rand, it doesn't include the inverter, it doesn't include the batteries, it doesn't include the consumables, the labor, anything. It will just look at what did you spend on panels. If you spent 20,000 Rand on panels, you can get up to, I think it's 25% of that back, to a maximum of 15,000 Rand is the maximum rebate you will get. So in order to get the full 15,000 Rand rebate, it would equate to installing about 16, 17, 18 panels, depending on where you get your panels from. But it's a large number of panels to get 15,000 Rand back. And the irony of that is, in order to have a system that has 18 panels, it's a big system, and it's going to be costing you 250, 300,000 Rand. So, it's actually, yes, it's 15,000 Rand, and no one's going to turn that away, but it sounds better than it actually is, to kind of get that full rebate back. We are actively engaging and lobbying to try and incorporate rental products like the ones that we offer, because the irony of this whole scenario is they want to incentivize people to put solar up, but people can't afford necessarily to put solar up, hence the reason why companies such as us exist. So when this was first announced, there was mention of people who are leasing. So I do think it is in their plans, but as it stands, what was announced the other day, it's limited to cash customers.
Okay. All right. Maybe take us through, I think that says a lot about the tax incentive issue that they've recently announced. And as you say, it sounds very rosy at first until you read the fine print. And you have got 8 panels, I think you said, and in order to get the 15,000 Rand rebate, you have to put up 16 or 18 panels, and that's a rather large house or a large family. And there aren't, I think the general population are not really going to need that many panels. So it's only a few people will benefit from that 15,000 rebate, which is really sad. But I'm glad that you guys are doing something about it for us, to go and lobby with government to get incentives in place or to extend it to people who want to rent solar. So tell us about the options that you guys offer. I know there are three options. If you can tell us what they
Just before I
are and what the
do,
pros and cons are of each of them.
sure. Just before I do jump into that, there's in a similar kind of vein, the feeding tariff. So City of Cape Town have announced that they will allow people to sell excess electricity back into the grid.
Yes.
Great in theory again, but basically as it stands today, those meters that you need to install a new meter, which is a bi-directional meter, so it knows what's going in and what's going out. And those meters are at today's prices sitting at around 12,000 Rand just for the meter. So
Wow.
again, sounds like a great initiative, and it is a step in the right direction. However, in order to use excess power, so anything that you don't consume in your home, and you sell back at, I think, 25 cents, which is kind of 10% of what they're selling it at, it's going to take you about 10 years just to pay off the meter. So
Oh,
again,
wow.
just to kind of go eyes wide open into these situations that do sound good. I think it is the fact that they're allowing you to sell excess power is a huge step in the right direction. However, the economics need to make sense in order for it to be viable for people. So just another kind of word of warning for anyone considering that option.
Thank you for mentioning that. I never looked into that kind of detail. And as you say, it all just sounds wonderful and in the step in the right direction, but the numbers needs to be working for both parties. Okay,
Yeah,
Roz, the three options that you guys offer, tell us about it and the pros and cons around each one.
Yeah, so basically, it's a kind of a matrix. So we've, in terms of our product offering, we've tried to make it super simple to understand. And we say, the 5 kilowatt system is X a month, the 8 is Y, blah 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 blah. Plus, we've tried to almost build it out like an Indicio's pizza menu, whereby add on a battery at 800 Rand a month, or add on a panel at, whatever the cost is, 120 Rand a month, to make it very easy for you to understand. But then the payment options, which I think you're referring to being the three options, are cash, simple, very easy to understand. Rent to own, which is basically an asset finance solution, whereby you're paying off this asset over a period of 60 months. So 5 years, after which you own it. And then our most popular product is our solar as a service. We call it SaaS. And basically what that is we own it as the company. You as the consumer simply utilize it. So it's a service offering, basically another utility bill, if you will. There's pros and cons and trade-offs depending on which way you want to go. The obvious benefits of cash and rent to own is that you own that asset afterwards, and once the repayments fall away, you've effectively got free electricity to offset your bill hugely. The flip side of that is it does take between 5 to 7 years to pay for itself. It will pay for itself always, and it'll pay for itself many times over. So that's great investment. However, if you aren't sure, like I am, I've got one small child. If I have another child, I need to move. And the likelihood is I'm going to move within the next 7 years. So I wouldn't have seen necessarily the benefit of buying my system now. Yes, it adds value to your property. Whoever's buying my house, I think would take that massively into consideration. So it's not like it's a sunk cost that you're not going to get it back. However, where we're seeing great traction in the market is on the pure rental. And the reason being, one, for the same product, it's kind of almost half the price. So you're paying 2,000 Rand a month as opposed to 3,500 Rand a month for the same thing. Two, you don't have the cost of ownership. So should there be any issues in 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years time, it's not yours, it's ours. So again, if we don't fix it, you stop paying, and and it's the way that the world is heading in terms of Netflix, Spotify. You don't need a CD collection, you don't need to own anything. It's just everything is readily available, and you pay a monthly premium in order to access that. So that's been our number one product, I think, mainly because of the price point, and secondly because of the flexibility in which it offers our customers. But again, there's pros and cons to both owning it and just utilizing it. It really comes down to the end user and what their preference is.
When you guys quoted me on both properties, you gave me all three options. And I must say the solar as a service or the rental option is an absolute no-brainer, because if I take the monthly cost and I divide it by 30 and I add that onto my nightly rate on Airbnb, there is not a guest in this country, in this world, who would not pay that little bit extra every day on the daily rate in exchange for no load shedding issues like electricity 24/7. It is really the no-brainer option for me. And I also like it because it's in line with this whole new economy way of thinking. And when it comes to Airbnb, Airbnb is the same. Airbnb makes money off everybody else's homes, and they don't own a piece of real estate. And the same with Uber. They don't own any of the cars, but they make money off other people's cars. So it's that whole new economy way of thinking, of having access to assets instead of the old economy way of thinking of owning assets. So I really love that option. And if any of you guys are going to get a quote from Versify, then I'm sure they're going to give you all three options, and you'll see immediately what I mean by that. It's made solar just so accessible for everybody.
And we've tried to remain flexible within those three options as well. So if any time you want to go from a rent to own to a SaaS, we are happy. Another big kind of solve for us was, what don't we like about banks and finance product? And it's the hidden T's and C's and these fees that come off, and the inflexibility around them. We've tried to counter that by being as flexible as possible with our customers, because life happens, and to hold someone down to a commitment is not really the way that we want to operate. We'd rather give them the flexibility. If they want to buy it out, cool, we'll happily allow you to buy it out, or vice versa.
It's great to have that flexibility, especially when it comes to a grudge purchase like solar, and paying for parking at shopping centers. Those are the two main grudge purchases, I think, in life.
Well, solar, it's funny you say that. They're associated with a grudge purchase, but it's the first thing that they pay their bill on. People phone us. If we run a debit order over the weekend and don't collect, people are phoning us on Monday morning saying, please don't cut us off. I haven't had my debit order yet. So it very quickly, once you don't have load shedding anymore, it very quickly turns from a grudge purchase to the best thing you've ever done. So yeah, we see this every day. The feeling you get, if we could bottle that feeling, we'd have a very, very successful business model.
Okay. All right. So that's in a nutshell. We've got about 4 minutes left, but I think there are lots of questions.
I'm happy to hang on a bit longer if people...
Thank you. I know that you have a small baby to attend to, and we really appreciate you making the time for us after hours, Roz.
No problem. I was late, so I'm happy to
that's my fault for sending you the wrong link. Oh, disaster. Sorry. What I want to just quickly chat about before we go into the Q&A, and there's a few questions around your offering that I've seen popping up in the chat box. But I've done some homework on Who is eating? Oops. What is happening around the industry? And I'm talking specifically the hospitality industry and the short-term rental industry. And if you look at, you just go online and you type in Google hotels without load shedding. And one of the first ones that will pop up is the Tulbach Hotel. And they've even got a funny cartoon poking fun at Eskom and saying how there's absolutely no load shedding there. You can go and enjoy your time and the restaurant is open and everything. So, you know, it's just South Africans, we are so good at laughing at ourselves, making fun of ourselves. And the Capital hotels, bye bye to the dark side on their front page on their website. And then the Hilton Hotel, a Hilton Hotel group, this one specifically in Cape Town, Hilton Cape Town on the Upper East Side, always on, always ready. But these guys can afford, you know, they've got the big bucks, they've got more than one hotel. It's big groups. They can afford to have everything bright and light all the time. But when it comes to the short-term rental industry and most of the people who are here tonight who have got maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 Airbnb listings, very soon, if not already, people are willing to pay a premium if they know that your Airbnb is going to supply a load shedding solution. And you can just go and have a look. I just went online again and I said Airbnb with no load shedding. And you will see here, these are just 3 that I picked randomly from the top of my search in Google. This one's got 111 reviews, 127 reviews, 321 reviews. So it really is, I believe, people are going to be looking for those Airbnbs that have got no load shedding or they've got load shedding solutions. So we are all being pushed in that direction. So Roz, let's have a look at the questions that have popped up here. I'm going to just open them on my screen and just go as far back as I can see here. Somebody said, does the monthly payment option have a fixed term or is it as long as you're using the system?
So it is effectively in perpetuity as long as you're using the system. Our contracts, the only mention of a term is we have a deinstallation fee within the first 36 months. And the reason for that is we are obviously incurring costs if we need to move that system from point A to point B. Our first prize is that we won't ever need to do that, and it like fiber, it lives in the home regardless of who owns the home or who's occupying the home. However, in the instance that you are moving and you want to and the new person doesn't want to take it over, or you just don't think you need the solution anymore and you want to cancel, within 36 months we have a deinstallation fee. Post that falls away. And that's only real kind of element of a term. It does not mean that you can't get out of it after month 1, 2, 3, 4, whenever. It's not a fixed term contract by any means, but we try and incentivize people who take a longer term view on it by not having punitive measures if they've had the system for more than 3 years.
Right. And Ramos says the monthly payment, is it to pay the system off or the electricity used? I think you've kind of explained that in the previous answer. Leslie says, hi, thank you for your input. I'm currently going down this route with another company. I have a big home with 3 cottages that are attached to the main home. The main residence is thatch, another potential problem. Cottages have metal roofs and are flat, so lots of space for panels. Leslie, I don't know if there was a question in that. Ina says, will the network of installers be available in the garden route?
Yes, we do have a presence in the garden route. We've done a number of jobs in both Plett and Knysna, all the way up to kind of St. Francis, PE, those areas, Mossel Bay. So yeah, we cover the full garden route.
Right. Is there a fine when someone stops using the system? And if so, how much is it? That's Alison, but I think you've answered that with a deinstallation fee. If you go for the rental option and you want to cancel it within 36 months, then there's just a deinstallation fee. And then somebody else says, for prepaid using, how do you establish your electricity usage? Got that in that
So
apartment where the prepaid guys can't really tell me what my usage is, my
yeah,
kilowatt usage.
it is a bit tough. The best way to do it is to take we just kind of say do two readings, do one in the morning, one in the evening, and kind of do that for a couple of days, and you can work out kind of what your usage is. It's very good to know daytime versus nighttime usage. So basically, what we recommend to our customers or potential customers is take a reading at 7 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the evening. Do that for as many days as you can, obviously, and that'll give you a good kind of view on your usage. One of the benefits of being on prepaid, however, is there's no connection fee. They bake it into the price. The price you pay per kilowatt hour is more on prepaid than it is on postpaid. But because there's no connection fee and you're not using as much as you normally would, you're actually winning by being on prepaid electricity. So I actually changed my house from postpaid to prepaid
Oh,
to get
wow.
a bigger benefit.
Okay, that's interesting. Great.
It is interesting, however, if the feed-in tariff does come into play, that requires postpaid. So maybe don't rush to going to prepaid if you're on postpaid. Let's just wait and see what this feed-in tariff looks like
All right.
in a few months.
Rose, I think that question's been answered around what if I move to another house? Miguel says, have you experienced that guests will pay more for apartments with solar? Absolutely. If it says no load shedding, I'm willing to pay more. And
There's just one there from, sorry, it was a direct message. Okay, I'll
okay,
answer that direct message directly. Okay,
right.
sorry.
Linda says, if I understand correctly, the entry level is a 5 kilowatt inverter, and that is the offer of most solar companies. What is the reason for not starting on a 2 kilowatt TV alarm, Wi-Fi, few lights, with the option to expand and eventually be off the grid as you go?
So the main reason for that is it's almost just too small if you're going 2 kilowatts. So you get these trolley systems that work well for that, as you say, alarm, TV, those type of things. But if you are plugging it into your DB and wiring it in, which is what we do, we don't do the trolley systems. 2 kilowatts, as I mentioned earlier, is a hairdryer. So if you do the hairdryer and anything else in the lights, you're going to overload that inverter, and that's generally why 5 kilowatts is the kind of entry level starting point. You can obviously go smaller. We are looking at 3 kilowatt systems as well for the smaller kind of apartment type of solutions. So you by no means you can't go smaller. You certainly can. It just bang for buck. It's almost like it becomes diminishing returns. If you go too small, it's going to frustrate you. So 5 kilowatts for the price is kind of a good entry level.
All right, thank you. Then Catherine says, when the rental option term is ended, is there an amount that you need to pay before you have ownership?
So on the rental option, on the rent to own option, what we do is it's 1 extra month's rental to take ownership. So we'll give you an owner offer letter at the beginning of it's a concurrent letter that you get. On the pure rental, there is no ownership transfer. So there's no you can buy out the system at that point in time. We can give you a settlement. It's not even a settlement figure. We can give you a figure should you wish to purchase it.
Okay.
But yeah, there's no change of ownership on the pure rental.
Okay. And Alison is asking, how much is the deinstallation fee?
So the deinstallation fee it's effectively 20,000 Rand, basically. It's the cost that it's going to cost us to go remove the system and reinstall it elsewhere.
Okay.
So it's basically a cost covering mechanism.
Right. Leslie says, do you do thatch related homes? Do you install solar on thatch?
Yeah, thatch is a problem on to put panels on the thatch roofs for fire risks and fire hazards. We have done thatch homes, but what we've done there is we'd built a carport structure or looked at alternatives. So I think, Leslie, you made mention that you have other flat roofs on your cottages. We can most certainly use other areas and run cables to wherever the inverter and the DB board and those things are going to sit. It doesn't necessarily need to be directly above where the inverter is going to live. You can run cables. It obviously just it will depend on how far and what that the cost thereof is, but nothing is impossible. We can certainly find workarounds.
Okay, that's good news. Margaret wants to know if you are in Bloemfontein.
We have recently launched in Bloem, so yes, we are.
Okay, excellent. There are a few people here from Bloem. Denise, Roz's info, like website, garden route, contact number. Yes, Denise, I'm going to give you all of that right at the end. And I'm also going to be sending an email in the next day or two with a recording of the replay, because I've had so many emails from people saying, I can't attend tonight because we have load shedding. Neo says, I got a quote for solar. The company says I have to rewire my house before they can incorporate solar into the city system. The house was built in 1960. Is this a real thing, or am I being looted? Have I lost Roz?
There you go. How's it, Corin? Reason being that they need to work on the DB board. The inverter system gets wired into the DB board, and to cover themselves, and we do the same. If there are clearly potential kind of concerns around the wiring of the house, what we prefer to do is either we'll rewire it for you, or we can say to you, get the electrician in to come and rewire. We issue a COC, a supplementary COC for the work that we do. So in order to do that, you need to have your own COC. So it's just, I think, the reason they've done that is they don't want to inherit other people's issues. So yeah, it's not out of the ordinary for them to request that you rewire the house.
Just a follow up on that. So the board, I have a 5-year-old board. So I was doing extensions, and so with that we have a bigger board. And is that a thing? Because now they're saying the whole house needs to be rewired, even with the new extension.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would hurt to get a second opinion on that, to be honest. So it's hard to answer it without seeing the home, but it's not out of the ordinary for rewiring to be done. Also, they may need to do it. A lot of the time we see houses that have had renovations done or extensions, and in order to split essential and non-essential loads, and effectively what that is what's on backup when there is load shedding versus what's not on backup. Sometimes we see all these weird and wonderful things that we need the Wi-Fi and the lights to be on the essential loads, but they are via the wire connected to an outdoor jacuzzi, which is obviously not a viable solution. So rewiring may need to happen in order to get the Wi-Fi on and the alarm system on, but not the jacuzzi on, because that will just kill your batteries. So yeah, I'd get a second opinion, but it's not out of the ordinary.
Okay. Rosin, because I got kicked out of the room here for some reason, I've lost the chat history. So if you wouldn't mind going to the chat and just picking up on where we left off.
The rental option is fully tax deductible as an expense for the Airbnb, whereas the renting to own, only the interest portion is deductible. Yes, I would imagine so in the course of business. So the rental option would be an expense on your income statement, whereas on the rent to own, the interest portion would be kind of below EBITDA. So I mean, I would ask your accountant for their opinion on that, but effectively that's how I would be looking at it. Yes.
Yeah, very good point there.
Then Tanya, how long does the batteries or panels last before you have to do maintenance, and how expensive is this compared to the overall price? So the batteries and inverters are warranted for 10 years. So that should give you some comfort that the manufacturers have put their faith in their product. Panels are anywhere between 15 and 25 years in terms of warranty and performance guarantee. And there's not a whole lot of moving parts. Once the system's in and it's working, there may be some teething issues in the first couple of weeks. Things, we've effectively done surgery on your DB. There may be some things that are tripping or whatnot. But once you're through that snag period, which is something we incorporate into our offering or into our design, once you're through that, there's very little maintenance that's required. We do offer the maintenance on that, and that may be as simple as cleaning your panels on a periodic basis, once or twice a year, and just coming in. We have the ability to remote monitor and change settings. So it's unlikely that we need to come to site. However, we do like to pop in from time to time, make sure that everything is running smoothly. Again, on our solar as a service, which is the majority of our customers, it's our asset. So we want to make sure that it's running optimally, and there's no kind of performance leakage in that regard.
So Ross, you then able to monitor it remotely as well on the solar as a service, the rental option?
Yeah, hugely. Yeah, exactly. So 9 times out of 10, where we are heading to is we don't want our customers to have to worry about anything or touch anything, because 9 times out of 10, when there's an issue, it's been because Mr. Jones has been fiddling and he's changed a setting here or there, and we'll never admit to doing that, but we can clearly see that that's what's happened. So we do have the ability to change settings remotely without having to come in. We also got some very cool tech around the load shedding schedules and load shifting. So my example, as an example, there is, if load shedding is announced out of the blue and it's starting in 2 hours, we can then prioritize that your batteries fill up from the grid so that you've got backup during that time and you're not kind of caught unawares. Or that if we know there is no load shedding, cool, let's drain your battery and use that so that you're not drawing from the grid as much and you get your savings. So we have these dynamic offerings that we are incorporating into our systems. On the next question, I'm on the main house and have rentals on cottages on same yard. Do you install for main house and for each cottage, or do they go for the main house? We're all on prepaid. I think we deal with that on a case-by-case basis. It really depends on location of the main house in relation to the cottages. We can do both. We can have one main system that feeds into the others, or have one main system and then 2 smaller systems. There's many ways to skin the cat. So how our process works, and maybe this is a good segue into that, is you'll come to our website, you fill out a 2-second form, and then what we do is we'll set up a WhatsApp group with yourselves, ourselves, and the installer. We then align diaries and we'll come and do a site assessment. So each house is different, but we send a professional out to go there and assess the situation, what your recommendations are, what your requirements are rather, and then we'll give you recommendations based on that. So very hard to answer questions without having been to the house. But it also gives you an opportunity to talk shop to these installers and get the technical info that you require. So that may answer some of the questions. Who insures the solar system? Does it increase our premiums? It's a very good point. At the moment, you have to install it as the end user. It doesn't add hugely. My system is costing me 19 Rand a month, 19. Added to my building insurance. That being said, we are busy with our own insurance product whereby it will be baked into your monthly cost so that you don't need to worry about it. But as it stands today, the end user needs to insure it in the same way that if you finance a car through Westbank, you still need to insure it yourself. But we are very quickly moving towards a world where we will handle all the insurance for you.
Roz, is that also on the rental option?
Yes,
I have to insure it on the rental option?
You do. So the reason being, if you go and you leave your garage door open and things get stolen, we have no real control over that. So it's kind of we require someone to insure it until such time as we've got our product. We can't insure it, so we lean on our customers to insure it.
Okay.
So 5 kilowatt, please repeat the phase of your DB board for 5 kilowatt inverter. So the 5 kilowatt inverter is a single phase inverter. The only 3-phase inverter that we offer is a 12 kilowatt one. When it comes to 3-phase homes, you have 3 options, basically. You can either put solar onto one of the phases, and we can rewire your home and we've done this at plenty of customers, where we'll put the majority of the stuff on one of the phases, and we'll leave things like the jacuzzi and the underfloor heating on the 2nd and 3rd phase. But solar will only benefit that one phase and not the entire property. The second option is to put an inverter on each phase, which becomes a costly exercise, and it's not ideal. It can work, obviously, but there are complications by doing that. And the third, there's actually 4 options. The third is we can use the single phase inverter, which covers all 3 phases. Or the fourth, we can rewire your whole house onto a single phase. So we convert you from 3-phase to single phase. A lot of, especially in Joburg, the houses were built in the 50s, 40s, 60s, big mining towns. Why they have 3-phase, I'm not too sure. I'm assuming it's got to do with old farmhouses and whatnot. But the rest of the world doesn't really have 3 phases in residential. So it's unlikely you need 3-phase power, but we do have solutions for people who don't want to convert to single phase. Baboons and burglars are a problem as the place is often empty. Any suggestion? So baboons, not really an issue. We've done quite a few homes in like Pazula Estate where baboons are a problem. The main issue with baboons is kind of cleaning the panels afterwards. There's not huge amount of risk in terms of them breaking them. They are fastened to your roof. No baboon is going to rip them off. Burglars, on the other hand, different scenario. We found, though, in the residential kind of environment, less of a concern than in commercial kind of industrial parks, where people almost have access at any given time, and we've seen stories where people have stolen panels off the roof under the guise of them being solar installers, and no one questions because they don't know if they're putting on or taking off. However, in a home, you need a lot of time to pull a panel off of a roof. They are fastened. There are mounting structures that are theft proof as well. The irony is the panels are the least valuable kind of piece of the system. So not hugely concerned about them getting stolen. They're big, heavy, 20 kg, awkward things to carry. So if you have an alarm system, that should be a decent first loss layer that the first responders will get there before they've stolen much of your system. It's unlikely they're going to steal the whole thing. One other kind of fringe benefit that solar provides is that you're always on. So your alarm system should work always. We in our street 2 years ago over Christmas time, what guys were doing is they were turning you off at the mains, knowing that people are away, and then coming back a week later. And if the mains haven't been turned back on, they know nobody's at home, and they know that the alarm batteries and whatnot have run flat, and then they've got kind of carte blanche to your home. The nice thing about solar is your alarm system will be as an essential load, and it should in theory always be on. So assuming you've got an alarm, it shouldn't really be an issue. How does it cope with hail? These things are stress tested. They are built to live in the elements by design. That being said, obviously, if hail in Joburg in particular can get quite severe, touch wood, we haven't had any issues, including the massive hailstorm we had here in December last year. I think a few reasons. One, they are built to withstand kind of hail and the elements. Two, they are generally installed at an angle in order to get optimal kind of production. So generally, any hail kind of hits will be a glancing blow as opposed to a full-on blow. But it kind of insurable risk that if there are issues, come and swap out the panels at that stage.
Great. So I think that's the end of our questions, Roz. So just before we end, the very last thing that I want to share with you guys is Versify has agreed to give everybody attending this presentation a 20% discount on your installation fee. So over and above your monthly rental.
On the activation fee.
On the activation, sorry, is it activation, not installation? My apologies.
Yeah, on the rental products, there is no installation fee. So it's just, it's on the activation.
And the activation fee is, I think, 5,000 Rand.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so 20% discount gives you 1,000 Rand off. You do need to use the following link, which I am going to put in the chat box, if I still have it copied and pasted. So you guys can go and click on that link, make sure that you save it. I am also going to be putting it in the email that I'm going to be sending out with the replay. I make sure that if you watch the replay, it's activation fee, not installation fee. Sorry about that. And you're going to get 20% off if you use that particular link. If you use that link, Versify will know that you've attended this presentation, and then you will get your discount. But you can also use that link to then go and request a quote from them. There is a little bit of a questionnaire that you have to fill out in terms of a high level affordability. And then if you pass that test, Roz, if I'm not mistaken, you then come out and you quote. And then if you sign the quote, you then do a bigger affordability where you've got to submit your bank statements, et cetera, et cetera. Is that right?
Yeah, effectively. So we'll do a pre-approval. You'll get an answer within kind of 20 seconds of filling out the form. Assuming that's all good, we move to the quoting and proposal stage. On acceptance, or if you've indicated that you'd like to go ahead, then we'll do your normal finance things. It's for governance, and we need to make sure that we comply from a FICA perspective. And then we'll schedule an installation thereafter. Our current lead time is around 2 to 3 weeks, depending on where you are, from signature. So it's a relatively, in comparison to some of our competitors, it's very quick. We are aiming to get that down to kind of solar within 2 weeks always, but we're a bit inundated at the moment, so I just want to manage expectations in that regard.
Great. Roz, thank you once again for making the time to answer so many of our questions. You have been incredibly patient, and you have explained everything well enough for the blonde to understand. And I'll be distributing the replay, the recording in an email with all your details, and then people can get directly in touch with your company if they have any further questions. Thank you, guys. Thanks for attending. And keep an eye out for next month's announcement, because every month there will be a different speaker, and it will all be related to the Airbnb or short-term rental industry. Cheerio.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And if you do want a follow-up session, I'm more than happy to do that as well if the need is there. I think it is easier to speak to a whole bunch of people at once. So if you would like a follow-up session, more than happy to do that. I do apologize that we started a bit late. So
no, that was purely my fault. So sorry about that. And thank you, Roz. I think we would love to chat to you again. Thanks, bye. Cheerio.